The iron triangle of project management. Now, for those of you who have been around long enough to know the term iron triangle, you might be familiar with how the Project Management Institute, the PMI, the global authority on all things related to project management, formed back in the 1960s, how they used to in the past talk about how our project work has these three variables that we need to maintain. Now, over the years, however, the PMI realized that 3 points in a triangle, too limiting. There are so many more variables than those three that eventually they decided to lay aside the whole concept of the iron triangle. For me, however, I find that project managers, scrum masters, product owners, developers, they're all in some way dealing with this iron triangle, in some cases almost every day. So, what are the 3 points? Well, one of the points is scope or requirements or what it is you're trying to deliver. Another point on the triangle would be cost, sometimes called resources. Another point on the triangle would be time or scheduling. So you get these 3 points: scope, cost, schedule, and they pull and tug at each other. Now, from a traditional project management perspective, what we tend to see is scope is king, right? Scope is the thing that drives everything else. We spend a lot of time and effort defining what's needed, and then that definition is used to help us estimate what would the schedule look like and how much would it cost to deliver against that scope. And for some of you that have been in highly structured environments, you might even find that that scope variable, that requirements variable, has some pretty firm structure around it where there's a period of time that's allocated where we collect requirements and there's a deadline where we're going to close the door on those requirements. You can't add any more. And what that has done is, in those environments, it has created this sense of, I have to get it all in before they close the door. Because once they close the door on requirements, it's going to be so difficult to get my request in. Some of you might recognize this is related to one of the Agile Manifesto principles about minimizing the amount of work not done. Right? You can look that up on one of our other sessions. However, consider those 3 points. Scope then allows us to estimate schedule and estimate cost. And now it's closed, it's sealed, sometimes signed off, sometimes in contract form. And that's why it was called the iron triangle. Because to change any point on those three, I should say, of the iron triangle would become very difficult, very challenging. You'd have to go through some type of change management process for that to happen. Well, let's consider the iron triangle from an agile perspective. You still have those three variables. You don't get a free pass. You still have them, but they're viewed a little differently. In an agile environment, we recognize that it's very rare that we would have an unlimited budget and an unlimited time frame. Usually, there's some understanding about how far those variables can go. And you can test this out. I've been asked quite frequently, hey, here's some work here. Could you tell us how long it will take? And I might work with my team and we would conclude something like, as an example, yeah, we think it's going to take about 9 months. And then the requester says, 9 months? We don't have 9 months. We thought we can get this done in 6 months. Oh, so you had an idea of what would be acceptable. Might have been good to hear that up front. And then the question comes, well, how much will it cost to deliver this? And after discussion with the team and some high level estimates, you might come back and say, well, yeah, we estimate it's going to cost about 3 million US dollars to get this complete. And you get a reaction of $3 million. We don't have that type of funding. We thought we could have gotten it completed for less than 2 million. Ah, so there is a limit that you had in mind. So can we have some of those conversations early on where we talk about, so what's the time frame you're thinking and what's the amount you're thinking of spending? And even if the answer is, oh, don't worry about that. You just tell us what you think. The type of reaction you'll get will determine if they really did have some thoughts about that ahead of time. So in an agile environment, we try to understand what are those limits, those boundaries, if you will, and then using those boundaries, we then estimate the feature set. What do we think we can deliver with that time and money? So we kind of flip the iron triangle on its head, right? In traditional, we start with requirements and we estimate schedule and cost. In agile environments, we tend to have an understanding of the schedule and cost, and we use that to estimate the feature set. Now, if you can consider this on a bigger scale, so imagine you had that 9 month endeavor. In a traditional environment, you would set those three variables and you'd get to work. The iron triangle in that case simply represents the plan. It doesn't represent the actual execution. But in an agile environment, that iron triangle can now also start to represent execution. So we could come up with an iron triangle, even in an agile environment, that says, okay, we're allocating $3 million for 9 months, and here's the feature set. What happens next? Well, we start to work. And in an agile environment, we work in relatively short iterations. Let's say 2 weeks of delivery. Now, to keep the math simple, let's assume that I can execute 2 iterations per month. Over the course of 9 months, that would be 18 iterations. So I'm in the first iteration. I could look at that iron triangle now and shrink it down, not to the whole project, but to the level of one iteration. What's my schedule? 2 weeks. What's the cost? Well, easy. I know who my team members are. I could very easily calculate how much does it cost the organization to keep that team running for that 2 week period. Understanding I've got 2 weeks with these people, let's now estimate what we think we can accomplish. Now, the iron triangle represents both plan and it's a representation of execution. Keep in mind, you might have the flexibility to change all three of those variables. Most of us will find there might only be one you can change. Even traditional project managers have said, hey, uh, pick your two that you want to remain solid. You got cheap, fast, or good. Pick two. You got to tell me which one do I have that's flexible. And in an agile environment, that tends to be more on the feature set side.